Not sure if many of you know, but we do have a virtual tier within the Design Coven, virtual pro member tier, which includes 3 virtual meetings a month where we set intentions. We do group coaching. So bring all your questions. We answer those questions and you get to learn from other people going through the same struggles as you. We also do a business practice meeting. So we'll have somebody on to share a business practice that we can all benefit from. And then we also do a product training. So getting a sustainable, eco-friendly line to come on, share who they are so that we can be supported with other like-minded businesses. And if you're not quite ready for pro, you can always join our free community where you will connect with other like-minded holistic interior designers. You don't have to be an interior designer if you are kind of just dabbling or you're aspiring or you're looking into this field. We invite everybody from all journeys, and you don't, again, have to be a designer. You don't have to have a degree. We're just a beautiful community of like-minded people looking to create healing spaces, not just for ourselves, but for our clients and future clients. Come join us at designcoven.com/join. Hey there, welcome to the Holistic Interior Design Business Podcast. Our guest today is local San Diego artist Taylor Chapin. Working in both oil and acrylic, Taylor Chapin's paintings examine advertising, branding, superficiality, and the construction of value under the lens of American neoliberal capitalism. Her work questions our mindless drive toward industrialized American consumerism, the contents of which fill and fetishize our interior and exterior space. She reimagines mundane consumer goods, emphasizing their inherent banality while simultaneously enshrining them, questioning how value is manufactured and challenging the perceptions of what is real, unreal, valuable, valueless. She is drawn to the allure of what lies underneath. She drapes, wraps, and covers with various fabrics to transform once recognizable forms into abstract shapes. She semi-composed inklings of what lies below. It is the illusionary quality of implied volume and depth that bemuses and betrays the two-dimensional space of the stretched canvas, allowing the painted surface to become an additional layer of the facade. Chapin was born and raised in San Diego, California. She received a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Painting from San Francisco Art Institute and recently graduated with a Master of Fine Arts at University of California, San Diego. She lives and works in San Diego, California. I love incorporating local artists into my interior design projects. And at the Design Coven, we will be visiting Taylor's studio here in San Diego, where we get to experience her work in person and talk to her about her experience and how she transforms all of that into art. So if you're in the Design Coven, you have a treat coming up for you this Friday. You're listening to the Holistic Interior Design Business Podcast. This is a podcast that guides you as a new or inspiring independent interior designer navigating your entrepreneurial path. Here, with my over 20 years experience, I will share my holistic approach to design with intention and ancient practices, including feng shui, all incorporating mind, body, and spirit into my design projects. You will also learn from seasoned interior designers as they give strategies and insight of how they built their businesses and continue to work in the field. Together, we will discover supportive trade partners, new ideas, creatives, and inspiring artists from around the world. I am your host, Rachel Lorraine Crawford. Hello, welcome back to the Holistic Interior Design Business Podcast. I have artist Taylor Chapin on with us, and I'm super excited to get to know you, Taylor. Thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Rachel. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. And we're gonna do a tour visit of Taylor's studio on Friday for the pro members in Design Coven. So you get to experience her art live and in person and her energy as well. So I'm gonna go ahead and open up our space by lighting a candle, just setting intention for connection, creativity, And then I'm going to pull a tarot card. Most of the time I pull like crystal cards, but today I was being drawn to pull a tarot card. So
Great.
let's
I
see
love
what
it.
that has to do, what it
Yeah.
has to say for us. Right. So we got that going. And then
Nice.
I'm pulling from the Modern Witch Tarot deck, and her cards are very like, it's like a modern
Those are
rendition
cool.
of
Yeah. Oh, the
the
colors
Rider
are
Waite.
great.
The
Oh,
colors
that's
are fun.
awesome.
Let's see what we got. And I'm going to read the cards right side up. So if any of them come in upside down, I'm going to turn it around. It's just how I like to read. All right. So let's just connect and see what we need to know for today.
Yeah.
What's here? Oh, we've got the Eight of Swords. So this card is all about feeling stuck or a little bit trapped or stuck between a rock and a hard place. And the thing about the swords is it's usually all in our head. So
I can relate. I can definitely relate.
Yeah. So it's like we have the tools right there to cut that blindfold, to cut the binds from us. She's standing in water. So that's connection to our intuition, our higher self, really being able to feel into things. So yeah, it's like I pull this card. I'm like, okay, like all those things or those cages that I put myself into, it's like no one else is doing that. It's all me, and knowing that is really empowering. And it's like, okay, how can I cut this?
Yeah, I mean, that totally relates to me. I feel like it's in my head, and it's within, like, fortunately within my power to free that too.
Yeah, exactly. We get to be our own hero. So it's like, don't wait for anyone else. Just
yeah.
We can do it.
It's good. I'm inspired. I'm ready to get out of my head.
Yay. Okay, so I always ask everybody that comes on, just what's home? What's home for you at the moment? It could be the idea, it could be your physical space.
I love that question. I mean, I think I'm so kind of home-oriented in general. And so, I mean, it's definitely the physical space for me of home, like our house where we live in Oceanside. But more so than that, like all of my, I don't know, for lack of a better word, tchotchkes. Like, I feel like I've traveled everywhere I go. It's like the same couple of boxes of stuff that I've had forever. That, I mean, the collection continues to grow, but to like be surrounded by objects that feel so familiar and like hold all these memories, or have been given to me by someone special, or have been like passed down through family. I feel like that's what, I don't know, there's that kind of constant familiarity despite wherever I'm living at the time.
I'm curious, you talk about like these tchotchkes or these things that you bring with you. Is there something in particular, a certain object that you have to bring with you in your travels, or that somehow just always ends up being in your bag?
You know, that's a good question. I feel like it's not necessarily one specific thing. Like when I'm traveling just for work or for pleasure, like I like have this tiny suitcase. Everyone's like, how do you fit anything in that? And I travel so light. So I'm like, I just need like one shirt and one pair of pants. But then when I'm moving, like it's like boxes and boxes of like, I'm like, I had this when I was 10. Do I really still need this? But
I know.
There's that emotional connection to it. And a lot of stuff's from family too. So it has these kind of memories, and I don't know, it makes every house, I mean, everywhere I've lived is like kind of like some version of the same thing because it's different setting, but all the same kind of objects that I don't know, always feel like home.
That's really cool. I love
it. And the cats too. I can't forget about the live cats that I have.
They're part of the family.
Yes, don't want to shout out to them.
I would love to know, you're here locally, which is really cool. I love talking to local artists because we get to interact with your work, like physically here, and your mural that just went up like literally down the street from me. So I get to do that every day. Can you share, like, how did you enter the art world? Like what did that look like, and when did that start?
Yeah, I mean, it in a very roundabout way. I feel like I kind of stumbled into it. I mean, growing up, I grew up in Encinitas, and I went to SDA, and which was a great high school for art too. They had a really fantastic kind of, for a public high school, they had much more arts programming than your average school. So I always was doing art as a hobby growing up. and never really thought about taking it more seriously, or just didn't even maybe know that I could. Like, I was like, oh, it's just something that I do for fun, and there's not a career in that. It's and then kind of through multiple failed attempts at college, and maybe taking the more kind of what I thought I should be doing route, I kind of had to think more critically about what did I actually want to do. And I was taking some life drawing classes at Miracosta at the time, and one of my professors was talking about art school, and I'd never even heard of art school. I was like, "Whoa, what's that? Like, that sounds amazing." And so he went to San Francisco Art Institute, and he was like, "You should check it out. It sounds like it's such a great environment." And so ended up going up there to tour the school, and I was just like in heaven. I mean, I was just like, wow, this exists. Like, this is amazing. This is where I want to be. And so finally then being in that environment, I just my peers, professors, everyone just making work around me was just so inspiring. And I was like, oh, this is people's lives. And so that was probably my early 20s, and then just haven't looked back from there. Questioned myself a lot, but haven't looked back.
What were you studying before you went into art that you realized that's not what you want to do?
I was just doing a much broader liberal arts education, kind of just hadn't really honed in on anything specific, kind of just GEs, had vague liberal arts leaning, but just kind of not really knowing what I needed or wanted to do, and just that, the stress of that, even just getting in my head about not knowing what I wanted to do. So having this world of art open up it changed my life, really, and kind of gave me a focus that I was really struggling with prior to that.
That's so cool. What kind of art was it that your professor saw you doing that kind of sparked this inspiration to open up this world to you? Do you remember?
Yeah, it was a life drawing class. And so he was teaching a life drawing class, which was great. I mean, it's always just so fun and helpful and difficult to draw from a live model. And I think, as you can see with my work, I've always been very obsessively detailed.
Yes.
So I think he just kind of I was putting crazy attention and hours into projects. And so we just kind of started having a conversation from there.
That's so cool. And in your work now, are you using live models? And
I do to an extent. I try to every once in a while I try to kind of pop into a figure drawing class just because it's so fun. But I work from a model, but I usually photograph my model. Because just for the how long, I would be asking, I think I'd, a lawsuit eventually for unfair labor practices. Just because the work just takes days, months, hours. So I have a model, but then I usually just use a photograph reference of them.
Got it. So tell me what happened after you went to school, and this was in San Francisco that you
so that was great. I love the Bay Area, and it was the first time that I'd moved long term from San Diego, so it was just a really nice kind of, there's so much to love about San Diego, but it was just nice to kind of be in a new space, new people, much more of a city. And I was up there for a few years. It was just, I feel like my world kind of opened up with making work and painting and just being in a new environment. And I stayed up there probably about 4 years in total, staying for a little while after school and working at a restaurant, had a studio in a really kind of dog patch area of the city. And I was living in the city, and it was just getting to the point where, it's all of California, but especially in San Francisco at the time, it was just hard to sustain myself financially with the time that I wanted to be in the studio. And so I was just what's the, I'm working in a restaurant, to what end? And so it was kind of felt like a natural time. I was missing my family and missing Southern California. So I felt like it was a good time to not be in one of the highest rent districts. I mean, it's not that much different down here, but
Right.
but yeah, I love it up there, and I get up there every chance I get to. I have some family up there too.
Oh,
So
nice. And so what happened when you came back home? Like, how did you enter the design community here in San Diego?
yeah, it was a little bit tough at first because I mean, I'm so familiar with San Diego and have such a strong community here from growing up, but I feel like the arts community is kind of spread out, or there's different factions of it. What really helped me actually was I started to work as a teacher at Lux Art Institute,
Oh, yeah.
which is now ICA. But it was Lux at the time, and so that was really my first kind of connection to, I guess, a more formal art community, and it was great. I mean, I got some teaching experience, which I was really trying to kind of start doing, and that was fantastic. And there was such a great crew over there, and I mean, I'm still close with a lot of those people to this day. So, and it's just, I mean, it's exciting to see what they're doing over at ICA now these days. They've gone through a big rebranding.
I know. We had Andrew on.
Oh, good. Oh, Andrew's fantastic.
So I'll have to connect that podcast episode to this one in the show notes so that they can get it.
Yeah.
Andrew and
Andrew's so great. I mean, I'm just so impressed by everything that he's doing with ICA, and I feel like he's making it more accessible and more community oriented, and connecting like North County to downtown San Diego too. So I just really grateful for all the nonstop work that he does.
That's super cool. So what year was it that you came down and you were working at Lux and teaching? And
yeah, I moved down back to San Diego in 2016.
Okay.
And I had the kind of goal in the back of my head of going to grad school eventually for art, of like Masters of Fine Arts. But I knew a couple of things. I felt like I'd been in the format of school for like a few years, and it's like I feel like when you're making work inside of an academic setting, like you're kind of on display, and like when you're getting feedback and like always talking about your work, always thinking about your work, and like always hearing what everyone else has to say, which is so helpful. But then I also felt like once I was done with undergrad, I was like, I just need like some time to think my own thoughts and see what I'll kind of digest with all the feedback, and see what's still relevant, what maybe isn't, or how I kind of want to push the work, and just kind of get out of, I mean, school is so great, but it's also such a bubble of like, how can I exist in the art world without this kind of support? And I mean, just it's hearing from people that it's at the time, like that it's very much not the same, and being like, can I do it? Like, can I sustain a studio practice like without having a deadline or a grade, or and it was a totally different experience, but it was great. Like, I just had time on the side to work in the studio and ended up getting some great connections through Lux that turned into shows. And so I was just working and painting for a few years down here, and trying to just get more on my resume and kind of build my own body of work with the goal of applying to grad school. Yeah, I ended up starting grad school at UCSD in 2019. And it felt like it was like a really nice amount of time in between to develop my work more, and like kind of go in with a lot more intention into like what I wanted from grad school, as opposed to just like out of fear of like not wanting to be out of school, or out of like, I felt like I was like, I want to MFA because I want to be able to teach at the college level, and I want to push my studio practice. And so I felt like it really gave me that time and like ability to clear my head to go into a really difficult academic environment with clear intentions.
Yeah, I love that you took that time off. I mean, it sounded like it was like 3 years to really reconnect with yourself.
Totally. And it was super helpful. And I think it's just, I mean, all of these programs can be pretty competitive too. So I felt like I was really able to like beef up my resume and demonstrate that I was kind of committed to working as an artist outside of any type of structure.
Yeah. I always like looking at like, okay, what makes an artist sort of succeed, or be able to sustain versus somebody that kind of just has it as maybe this daydream or this hobby. And I think just hearing your story, it's like you really threw yourself into like giving back and teaching, creating relationships versus just kind of hoping and wishing that they get discovered. And
Yeah, totally. And I feel like that's so important. I mean, especially like, I mean, I love being in the studio, but I also am like, I don't need to only be with me and my own thoughts all of the time. Like having that community and teaching, I mean, I feel like they all just complement each other so fantastically, and like each informs the other, and it's all this kind of ecosystem where one doesn't, I mean, they can exist without each other, but I feel like they really support each other in kind of having a more balanced life, which I feel like can often be really hard as an artist.
Yeah. Do you recall like having your first show or what that was like and when that happened?
Yeah, I actually had my first like show. Well, there's a couple like I guess different structures. I think probably in 2016 I had like we showed during school and stuff, but then at the time, or they're not doing it anymore because they now like need the space for retail, which I get. But at the time, Viore, like the Viore store in Encinitas, had a wall that they like kept without any merchandise for showing local artists.
Yeah.
So I had a show with Viore in 2016, and that was the first time I'd like ever put a show together, and I was so stressed, but it was like I just like I knew I needed to do it, and it was what I wanted, so I just needed to like rip off the band-aid, and it was so great. And just because like I'm so lucky to have such a community in Encinitas too, so like friends and family showed up. It was really I was like, okay, this isn't so scary like what it was in my head versus what it was in reality. Like it was totally great, and I was like, okay, I can do this. And
so cool.
Yeah, and then like just I mean, one thing always has led to another, which I feel like have just been very lucky and grateful for that. Yeah, kind of more opportunities can, I don't know, kind of like a domino effect type of thing. But that was the first kind of solo show, I guess. So thank you Viore for having me.
Super cool. And I think it also just gives you that confidence, or that that just kind of solidifies that this is something that you can do. And then also like embodying that energy of you are an artist. And
yeah, it's really interesting to have shows too, because it's so different than working in the studio. Like it's the opposite of working in the studio. Like it's this kind of culmination of all these years of work, and then you're like on display, and like I don't know, but even like I feel like I like perform as the artist at an opening, which is really fun. It just is so different. It like only happens like tops once a year, and I'm like, okay, I can do once a year with the like full on social kind of component of it. But I also love it. It's so interesting to talk, because what I'm thinking about the work with that I'm so close to like is not what other people are thinking, and it's so interesting to hear like how other people are interacting with the work. And yeah, it feels like kind of whenever there's an opening, it feels like a celebration, and then by the time midnight rolls around, I'm like, okay, what's the next project?
Super right. I was just gonna ask you, like, what's your favorite part about like connecting with people at these shows? Is it like their interpretation of your work, or is there something else that really gets you excited and pumped up about it?
I think it's definitely that, because I love hearing what people have to say about the work, because it's so, I mean, I think that's one of the like beauties of art, is it's so subjective. Like you're coming in with your own experience and understanding, and so I love what people notice or think of or connect. And then I feel like with an opening, it feels like when I'm in the studio and working, even if I'm working on a deadline, it feels so kind of abstract. And so it's so nice to be in this, like feel like the culmination of this work has like resulted in, I don't know, the work getting out of the studio and into a new space. And I feel like that's always kind of transform it. Like the work always looks so different outside of the studio. And yeah, I'm always so curious how people interact with work, because I have I'm in my own head or with my own narrative, and it's just so interesting to hear what people have to say. And I just like the social, I feel like sometimes the art world can be a little intimidating or hard for people that aren't familiar with it to enter. And I feel like when you are able to talk to artists or like just be in that more social environment, I really try to like just make it as approachable as possible, because I feel like it doesn't need to be put on that inaccessible pedestal that it sometimes is.
Yeah, for sure. Can you tell us a bit about your current work that you're working on right now, and like the inspiration and where that's coming from and where it's going?
Yeah. So I've been developing this body of work for a couple years now, that started in grad school, thinking about a lot of my interests primarily kind of lie in this idea of consumption and consumerism, like especially within the context of the United States, which I mean, it happens everywhere, but I don't,
Right.
My experience is here. And so thinking about how we're trained to consume and how that ties into value and kind of signifiers of value of what is it, like kind of even this idea of like conspicuous consumption. And so kind of like brands like showing different kind of socioeconomic signifiers. And so those kind of things have always really fascinated me, because I feel like a lot of it is manufactured, like it's not necessarily real, like it's all kind of structured through like how we grow up, what we think we want, what we see our neighbors have, like all of these different things that kind of prompt us to consume or work another day to buy the next thing and kind of play our role within the system. And so I've been thinking a lot about how objects and how kind of various kind of branding is like signifiers of these different types of value. And so I was kind of initially starting with this idea of like, what does it mean if I take away the identifiers? Like if you can't see the brand on the bottle of wine, like how will you know if it's Tubuck Chuck or Dom Perignon or and there's humor. Like I think too, like for me, humor is really important in my work, because I feel like it makes it more approachable, and I want that. So there's definitely maybe a subtle dose of humor and kind of playfulness in the work. But within this context of thinking about, I've started covering up various types of consumer objects and bodies as well in fabric. And so there's really no identifiers left except for the form. And they're covered up in all of these like super colorful, super bright fabrics that are kind of mixed and matched. And so I'll set these up in my studio and have people wear these kind of skin tight fabric suits, and I'll work from these as photo references. And so then what I'm trying to kind of think about with this is like when I'm covering these bodies and objects up in these new kind of super bright, super stimulating colors, like it becomes it's another layer of the facade of like, it kind of draws you in because it's bright, it's colorful, but at the same time it's like empty in this way that I think about a lot of like that I feel a lot of branding and advertising is. So it kind of, I don't know, a little bit like akin to like Vegas or something where it's like all kind of smoke and mirrors, but like we're highly stimulated because there's so much going on, but is it maybe more of a means towards distraction as opposed to like a means to an end, like so that we don't think too hard about what we're doing or what the system makes us do. Just to stay like a hefty dose of distraction in order to kind of keep up the status quo. So that's the kind of work that I'm working on right now. A lot of it's big, especially the figurative work, but again, kind of like transforming these objects and these bodies through kind of completely obscuring them, but then they kind of take on their own new forms through like kind of wrapped color and wrapped pattern, and thinking about how that's kind of its own form of like playful deceit, I guess, or illusion.
And so when we come in on Friday, will you have some of these works available, or will they be on show?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I have some. I'm working on a lot of like this is all the work I have available right now, and I'm working towards a couple shows. So when y'all are in here on Friday, you'll hopefully see what I'm talking about, because I feel like a picture is worth 1,000 words.
For sure. And we'll have photos on like the posts and the email blast.
Oh, good. Okay, nice.
What you're referring to, for sure. Because yeah, it's something that you definitely have to see, and then you'll be like, oh, I get it. I totally know what you meant.
Yeah. I feel like it's kind of maybe the kind of themes or framework is like a really helpful additional component, but the work also can be, I mean, kind of like what we were talking about earlier, the work can, like, that's how I think about the work and read the work, but when I talk to other people about it, like, they can also have a totally different experience.
Yeah, for sure. And so what shows are coming up for you coming into the spring, the end of winter?
Yeah, I'm in a group show that's down at the San Diego Library.
Oh yeah.
That's the theme of it is around consumption and consumerism. So that seemed like a perfect fit. So that's in May, and then in September I have a solo show with the ICA. So that's kind of my big project right now that I'm working on. So that'll go up I fortunately have a little bit of time because the work takes a while, but that's the other big project that I'm working towards right now.
And will that be in the Encinitas campus or down?
Yeah, it'll be at the Encinitas campus. Yeah, that'll be in September. It'll be like there's the 2 spaces at the Encinitas campus, and I'll be in the lower space, and then an artist who actually was on faculty at UCSD, and I had the pleasure of getting to work with her there. She's going to be in the other gallery there. So, and her work is fantastic and kind of is thinking about similar themes in a very different way, but I'm really excited to have coinciding shows with her as well.
Super rad. I love that you guys get to kind of show at the same time and intermix.
I know, me too. Her work is her name's Danielle Dean, and her work is fantastic, and I'm like, wow, I feel very lucky to get to show coinciding with her. So I think they'll complement each other really nicely.
And do you always use the same medium, and what is that medium, or do you like to experiment, or what's your...
Yeah, I'm very resistant to change. I would almost exclusively call myself a painter. I've been working mostly in oil these days because I love working in oil, and I'm in a space where I have enough ventilation to do that. But I've worked a lot in acrylic too, and doing a little bit kind of experimental stuff around installation when I do have a show, and messing around with, I've kind of gotten into screen printing a little bit too, which has been real fun. But I'd say I'm almost exclusively a painter.
Yeah. When I was at Oolong and you had that back room with the
inklings,
what did you use on the wall? Like that, it looked like wallpaper. It was really cool.
Yeah, I learned how to do screen printing when I was down at UCSD, and so I had this idea of like making my own wallpaper for the show. So yeah, I got there's a vinyl that's like a little bit more removed, like the less permanent vinyl. So I used that, and then I screen printed hundreds and hundreds of feet of it for the show down at UCSD, and then I had some left over still. Okay. So I used that for the space at Oolong, and it gets a little trippy in there.
Yeah. I loved it. I was like, oh my god, that's so rad.
Yeah, I was thinking about it too, because it the way I've installed it in the past is the pattern on the background of the painting matches the patterning on the wallpaper, so it kind of has this weird camouflage or kind of one-to-one effect. It's hard to look at for a while, but it has a kind of, I don't know, I like the kind of distortion that it creates.
It was totally trippy. I loved it. It was just it made you like try to look, okay, well, where's the painting and where's the wall and how does that...
Yeah, totally. And I like also with that thinking about like how painting is usually so kind of, or an installation, like it's often so sterile, like white wall painting, white wall painting. And so I like the idea of kind of just messing with that, and like it's with the wallpaper it does so the opposite, like you're trying to figure out what's what, as opposed to like the wall receding and the painting coming forward.
But it just kind of like it was an installation all on its own, like almost you like almost walked into a painting because you were just surrounded.
Yeah, and screen printing feels so akin to painting too, because I mean you're pulling ink, and then like, why do I ever hand paint this ever again? But here we are.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's super, super cool. I loved it. And I always ask this too. Is there anything that you're doing that kind of keeps you grounded, or any practices that keep you centered or just mindful in general? There's always things happening in life, and just curious what your practices are.
Yeah, I think one thing that really helps me is creating a sense of structure for myself, especially with days that I'm in the studio. I feel like I can easily get distracted or go down an internet hole or get in my head. And I feel like what's I've found really helpful is just really planning out my time intentionally and sticking to that in a way that I would if I was working for someone else as opposed to myself. And I've found that that's been just super helpful in helping me stay grounded and not veer too much into a spiraling downward spiral.
For sure. So with that, I'm curious, do you like set art time or studio time? And is that when you work, or do you get inspired and then you go in and work? Like, how do you manage that?
I work 6 days a week probably in the studio, and I just feel like for me there's definitely times that I don't feel like working, but I think for me it's just so important to reinforce the habit every day, that I just, whether or not I feel inspired, I make sure to get at least a few hours of painting done, and usually more, but definitely for me of just making a commitment to the structure that I've set up. And I mean, sometimes it definitely goes better than others, but always trying to work just really consistently, I found, for me at least, is really helpful.
Yeah, I'm always curious because it's like, as creatives, I feel like we kind of go in these waves, or at least I do, where it's like,
oh, me too.
I'll get super pumped up and then I can like get like a million things done, and then there's other times where I'm just like so slow, and it's like, oh my god, it's just going to take a million years to get this done, and I kind of have to literally take a break and like not do anything.
Completely. And I totally relate to that. And those are the days when it's like, I'm like, okay, maybe I need to start out the day with a run to clear my head instead of like being so excited to get in the studio. And so like when I am in that, like the flow state, I'm like, great, I'll ride it while it lasts.
Yeah.
But also knowing that it's gonna come and go. But it's great. I'll take it when it's happening.
Oh, it's awesome. Yeah,
I know.
Like, just ride the wave.
Yeah, it's definitely when it's not happening, it's harder to get up that same enthusiasm. But I feel like it's kind of like a muscle in a way of like, the more I kind of, forced is a strong word, but the more I'm just like, I'm gonna do it anyway, like the more I kind of have positive reinforcement for myself.
Yeah, for sure. I'm curious how designers can work with you. Are you represented by anybody? Can they connect with you directly? Like, what's that relationship?
Yeah, I have some work with a few different galleries in San Diego right now. I've been working with Oolong, and then I've been working with Quint as well down in La Jolla. But I'm not necessarily, or I'm not represented by either of them. So there's work available through both of those galleries, and they're both great and fantastic to work with. And then I'm also available to be contacted directly too, and I take commissions on sometimes if it seems like a good fit. So yeah, those are can be contacted directly is probably the best route, and then I can kind of shoot you in the right direction depending on what you're looking for.
Cool, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, Rachel.
Yeah, how can we find you? How do we find you on website or Instagram, or how do you like to be seen?
Yeah, so I have a website that has that's pretty updated, or like that has all of my recent work on it. And it's just my first name and last name, taylorchapin.com. And then I'm also on Instagram, and I'm always posting kind of in progress studio shots, the more in between stuff that you don't see on the website. So both of those are great sources, and there's a you can contact me through the website too, which
Okay.
just goes to my email. Yeah, I'd say those are probably Instagram or my website are the best ways to see what I'm doing and what's coming up and all of that.
Perfect. We'll have those in the show notes so that people can connect with you and check out
Great.
your art. All
Awesome. Well,
right.
thank you so much, Rachel. This was so great. This is my first podcast, so I hope I didn't ramble too much.
No, you're fantastic. I love it. I love being everyone's first podcast. It just kind of uses it all in.
Oh,
It's
that's
super
great.
fun.
Yeah. Well, I'm really excited to have you and
Yeah.
the other designers
Yeah.
over, so I'm looking forward to
Yeah,
it.
we're pumped, and we'll be sharing all of your other events too. So just keep you posted on all of that, and we'll share
Great.
it and get people to come out and support you.
Awesome. Fantastic. Thank you.
Great,
And thank you for all that you do.
Of course.
You've been listening to the Holistic Interior Design Business Podcast. If it's one that you have been enjoying, please share with anyone else that you think can benefit from this knowledge, and leave us a 5-star review. That helps us get seen and found by other new and aspiring interior designers. And if you're looking for mentorship, I invite you to join our club here at the Design Coven. It's a bridge between school and real life interior design. We get in much deeper there. We have virtual and in-person events, so everyone is welcome. You don't need to have a design degree to be part of it, just an interest in holistic interior design. I also want to thank our editor, Marcy Ferry, Blake Ferris, for all of her special help with the podcast, our social media posts, newsletter, and lastly, Kinseth Thibodeau, who is our music composer. Until next time, be well, and we will see each other soon.